I'd always heard that a person could not be hypnotized to do something against their will. I suppose that's true, but what if there was a way to change your will? Hypnotizing you to do something would then be far easier, right? Sure, I know it sounds like bad science fiction, but believe me, it's true. I know it's true because it was done to me. I grew up like any other boy. I played sports, climbed trees, and did the things boys did. I dated and eventually fell in love and got married. I expected married life to be pretty much the same as single life. I'd do guy-type things and she'd do the woman's work. I kept the grass cut, took out the trash every week, and spent weekends watching sports on television while she cleaned the house, did the laundry, and made dinner. That arrangement always seemed more than fair to me, and if my wife complained, I simply told her that she was merely doing what was expected of a woman and it wasn't my fault she happened to be born female. This always infuriated her, and she'd always promise to make me pay. Of course I wasn't worried. There was no way I would ever think differently, and I knew there was nothing she could do about it. At least that's what I thought. Today I'm all caught up with my work around the house, so I decided to sit down and put in writing what happened to change my attitude. When I say I'm all caught up with my work, I mean that the dishes are done and put away, the laundry has been done, sorted and put away, and I've fixed several loose buttons on my wife's suits. Since Kathy's taking me out to dinner tonight, I don't have to worry about making dinner. How did my wife manage to get me to change the way I think? She found a way to use hypnosis on me so that I wouldn't mind doing woman's work. Remember how I said that I didn't think a person could be hypnotized to do something against their will? Well, believe me, I tried as hard as I could to resist, but Kathy found a way to lessen my resistance, and while she was at it, made good on her promise of revenge. I'm now happy to help around the house, and the idea of my doing woman's work doesn't bother me in the least. You see, Kathy got her revenge by turning her sexist husband into a sexy lady. I used to wear a size 36 waist and slacks, had a 16-inch shirt collar, and worked out in my basement gym to keep in shape. I still work out in our basement gym to keep in shape, but it's a different shape now. Now I wear a size 9 dress, have a 25-inch waist, a 34-inch bust line, and my short brown hair is now a pretty shade of auburn that curls about my shoulders. Hypnosis, you ask? How could a man be changed into a woman by hypnosis? I'll try to explain, but understand, it took some time. Kathy's plan began to form one evening as we watched a hypnotist at a local club. Kathy and I had tickets to see a show and decided to take my parents along with her brother and his wife. The guy was putting on a heck of a show. He had several couples on stage and was really putting them through their paces. One man was told he was a cat while his wife was a dog. They spent the next several minutes barking and hissing at each other. The hypnotist then took another couple and told the man he was a little boy while his wife was his mother. I thought it was hilarious to watch the mother scold her son for an imaginary hole in the knee of his best pair of pants. Towards the end of the show, my brother, my dad, and I were asked to come up and allow ourselves to be hypnotized. I come from a long line of macho guys, and we were sure we couldn't be hypnotized. The last thing I remember was being told to concentrate on a spot in the audience, and then I heard applause. I looked over at my dad and brother, who were sitting there as dumbfounded as I was. The women were wiping their eyes as we left the stage and told us that we were the highlight of the show. It turns out that I was quacking like a duck. Her brother thought he was a dog and was lying at my dad's feet while Dad happily scratched his belly and made him fetch a stick. It wasn't until much too late that I found out that Kathy arranged to have a post-hypnotic suggestion planted with each of us guys so our wives could hypnotize us later. Each of us were told that whenever our wives used a particular phrase or word on us, we would immediately go into a hypnotic trance. From then on, we'd be putty in our wives' hands. Of course, Kathy was the first to try hypnotizing me, but while she got me to do silly things like I did on stage, no amount of commanding could change my sexist thinking. It was only after she mentioned her frustrations to her girlfriend, a research chemist, that she found the key to unlocking my resistance. Her friend had been working on a drug that was to be used to pacify violent prisoners. Once administered, the prisoners could easily be controlled merely by suggestion, which made a prison guard's job infinitely safer. The beauty of the drug was that it was easily absorbed through the skin and worked instantaneously. It could be mixed with water and sprayed on a prisoner from a distance, or objects could be coated with the chemical and put where a prisoner would touch them. The last method is what Kathy used on me, coating every piece of exercise equipment I owned. There was no chance of my avoiding it, and all Kathy had to do was to sit back and wait. One day I went down to work out, and when I came back Kathy was all smiles. When I asked what she was so happy about, she said something that didn't make sense, and the next thing I knew I was putting away the last of a stack of dishes I had just finished washing and drying. I tried to get an explanation, but Kathy would only smile and say that I had insisted on doing the dishes. I'd never done dishes before in my life and couldn't understand why I'd insist on it now. Even stranger was that 90 minutes had passed without my being aware of it. Things like that kept happening to me now and then, which began to drive me crazy. I'd be sitting there watching the game of the week, and the next thing I knew I'd be putting away the vacuum cleaner I had just used to sweep the rugs. One Saturday I remember asking Kathy when dinner would be ready, and 2 hours later I was sitting at the dinner table wearing pot holders and holding a roast hot out of the oven. Things like that happened for several weeks before getting worse. One evening I was going to meet some of the guys at a local bar for a few drinks. Instead of ending up in the bar, I woke up in bed naked with a very happy wife kissing me and telling me that I was the world's greatest lover. Now you'd think I'd remember something like that, right? But once again I remembered nothing. Kathy's brother Paul said I called him and said I couldn't make it, but he didn't remember what my reason was. He does, however, remember spending the evening watching what he called a wonderfully romantic movie with his wife. The only problem is that Paul hates romantic movies, and wild horses couldn't get him to go to one, let alone watch one at home. One of the strangest things to happen to me though occurred one evening when I asked Kathy what she was going to make for dinner. You guessed it, hours later I was standing in front of the stove getting cooking lessons that Kathy swears I asked for. Worse yet, I had a ruffled white apron tied around my neck and waist. I quickly pulled off the apron but felt a strange twinge of regret that I couldn't explain. As the months passed I found these blackouts to be happening more often, although there were times that I had faint memories of asking to help with some housework or cooking. I was afraid that I was going crazy, but Kathy assured me that everything was fine and I had nothing to worry about. Things were going so well for Kathy that she decided to up the stakes a bit and move more towards revenge. I don't think I'll ever forget the day at work when I went into the men's room, undid my zipper and found that I had on a pair of Kathy's panties. I quickly rushed into a stall and pulled my pants down. My fears were confirmed. I had on a pair of Kathy's nylon panties. That evening Kathy asked me if I enjoyed wearing her panties that day. She claims that I told her all of my underwear was in the wash and asked to borrow a pair of hers. When I showed her the neatly folded pairs of men's underwear in my drawers, she gave me an odd look and asked why I would have wanted to borrow hers. Strange things kept happening to me for no good reason. One day I was taking a shower when I realized that I had just shaved my underarms. Looking down I noticed the only hair left on me was a neatly trimmed patch of pubic hair. There wasn't another strand of hair left beneath my chin. Kathy just happened to be coming in for a shower at that time, and after looking me over asked what would make me want to shave off my body hair. I of course had no answer. I just stood there looking stupid with a razor in my hand. Things went on like that for several months until one day things really went from bad to worse. Kathy and I were sitting around watching television one Saturday afternoon when Kathy's sister-in-law Carrie walked in with a woman friend. She introduced her friend Amanda to Kathy and me, and we all sat down to talk. I thought Amanda was a real knockout in a short leather skirt and a silky white blouse. Her long legs started in a pair of high heels and seemed to go on forever. God, what I wouldn't have given to go to bed with that woman. I told Carrie to be careful bringing Amanda around Kathy's brother Paul to avoid his running off with her. Carrie burst out laughing and said that there wasn't much chance of that happening, after all Amanda was Paul. She then leaned over and whispered something to Amanda, who gently removed her wig and smiled at me. Kathy said some gibberish and suddenly it was plain to me that the woman I had been lusting over, the luscious babe sitting across from me, was really my brother-in-law. I was about to ask Paul what he was doing, that much I do remember. I don't remember getting any answer though, and the next thing I knew 6 hours had gone by, and I was staring at a beautiful woman who just happened to be my wife's brother. I felt an odd sensation when my leg rubbed against my chair, and when I reached down to check I noticed a woman's hand with long red nails rubbing a nylon-clad leg. Suddenly I realized that the woman's hand was attached to my arm and the nylon-clad leg was mine. I stood up and was shocked to find myself wearing a short, tight black skirt, a red blouse, stockings and high heels. I ran into the room to look in the mirror and found a woman with perfectly done makeup and curly brown hair looking back at me. The girls were laughing hysterically by now, and strangely enough I began to cry. Kathy came over and led me to my chair, which she held as I smoothed out my skirt and sat down. Yes, that's right, I actually smoothed out the skirt I was wearing just like a woman would. I began screaming and shouting, demanding to know what was going on. Kathy whispered something in my ear, and the next thing I knew it was morning and I was shaking like a leaf. Kathy asked me what was wrong, and I began to tell her all about the terrible dream I had, the one in which her brother and I were both wearing women's clothes and makeup. Kathy looked at me strangely and asked if there was anything I wanted to tell her. I had no idea what she was talking about, but she reminded me of wearing her panties that day and how I'd been using hair remover and shaving my legs and underarms. Now, after having a dream where Paul and I were done up like women, she wanted to know if this was some sort of fantasy of mine. I began to scream at her and called her some pretty nasty names. After all, she was hinting that I was queer or something like that. I explained in no uncertain terms and at the top of my voice that I was all man and that I'd prove it to her. I reached out to grab her and throw her onto the bed, but the next thing I knew 2 hours had gone by and we were laying next to each other in bed. I felt wonderful, and I said that the smell of her perfume was starting to make me horny all over again. Kathy was looking at me with a silly grin on her face, and when I lowered my gaze to my body I almost had a heart attack. Kathy was smiling at me because I was lying there wearing a short pink nightgown trimmed in lace. I immediately recognized it as one that I insisted she wear when I was feeling really horny, although I had no idea what I was doing in it. I had a horrid thought and immediately reached under the nightie to find my worst fears were realized. I was also wearing the lace panties that went with the nightgown, and I was the one wearing perfume, not her. Before I could say anything though, Kathy was all over me telling me what an animal I'd been and that I was welcome to wear anything of hers that I wanted. After another hour of torrid love making, I finally got up and changed clothes. I had no idea of why I was wearing Kathy's clothes and perfume, nor did I remember the animal lust she described. I was sure I was cracking up and confided my fears to Kathy, who helpfully recommended that I see our family doctor. I planned on calling first thing Monday to set an appointment. Kathy insisted on accompanying me to the doctor's office since it was a friend of hers, and oddly enough it made me feel better to have her there with me. I told the doctor all about my memory lapses but couldn't bring myself to go into detail about what seemed to be happening during those times. Kathy took my hand as if I were a child and explained everything to the doctor about my helping with the housework, my dream, and how I'd been wearing her clothes. The doctor gave me a thorough exam and said that she thought it was an effect of the vasectomy I had just before all this started. She suggested that I might feel that the vasectomy somehow lessened my manhood and I suppressed memories of what I considered unmanly things that subconsciously I felt I should do. She also thought that I couldn't handle the thought of it being me, so I projected the same problem on Kathy's brother. She jotted down a prescription which she gave to Kathy and said that it would help me gain control of my feelings and memories. Kathy had the prescription filled and I took them religiously. The doctor must have been right. Soon I was feeling calmer and better than I'd ever remembered. One night several weeks later, Kathy and I were about to make love when she asked if I'd do her a favor. I was probably too horny to think straight, so I quickly said I'd do whatever she wanted. The next thing I knew, I was actually agreeing to wearing her nightgown and panties again. You know, for some reason it didn't seem like that big a deal to me, and I didn't even mind when she sprayed perfume on me. This time I seemed to be able to remember the passionate hours of lovemaking, and it struck me that it was the best I'd ever had. I lasted longer than ever before and had several climaxes before falling fast asleep, exhausted and still wearing the nightgown and panties. The next morning was Saturday, so we stayed in bed a while longer and made love several more times. Finally, hunger began to build, so Kathy got up to make breakfast. I had an urge to help, so without a second thought I slipped on one of Kathy's robes and a pair of her slippers before following her to the kitchen. While breakfast cooked, Kathy, much to my enjoyment, pawed me through the silky fabric of the nightgown and panties. It felt so good that I begged her to turn off breakfast so I could make love to her right there in the kitchen. She kissed me and said that her macho stud would just have to wait for later. I figured that if even in a nightgown and panties she considered me a macho stud, I must be the greatest lover on the face of the earth. I began helping with the housework more and more in the weeks that followed. I couldn't seem to imagine why I had insisted on Kathy's doing it all alone before. It wasn't all that bad. I didn't even object when she wanted to watch a romantic movie on television or see one at a theater. After watching a few with her, I began to enjoy them, and once or twice I even had to blink back a tear or two. One day, as I was getting ready for work, I noticed Kathy's lingerie drawer was open. Without thinking, I reached in and helped myself to a pair of her panties. I was just pulling them on when Kathy walked into the room. She looked at me and smiled, saying that she hoped it meant we'd make love that night. I gave her a quick kiss, promised her another night of unbridled lovemaking, then finished dressing. Throughout the day I was aware of the silky panties I had on, but even though I hated to admit it, they felt wonderful. I even made a mental note to wear them more often. After all, look what they'd done for my sex life. I wore Kathy panties every day for the next 2 weeks, and every night I enjoyed a fantastic session of lovemaking. I thought about calling Paul and bragging about my renewed sex life to him, but I wasn't sure how to explain the nightgown and panties. Besides, why should I expect him to care? He wasn't a super stud like I was. After wearing her panties day and night for 2 weeks, Kathy surprised me one morning by suggesting that I wear a pair of pantyhose along with my panties. She coyly suggested that if the feel of nylon around my butt made me horny, imagine what I'd feel like having my entire lower body encased in nylon. I admit that I thought about it for a moment. Why in the world would a normal guy like me wear panties and nylons to work? For the incredible sex that I'd have later, I told myself as I snatched the pantyhose from her hand and worked them up my legs. Of course, sex was incredible once again, with me suggesting many different variations of lovemaking. We made love in every room of the house and in positions I'd only dreamed of. It never occurred to me to wonder why Kathy's lingerie was proving to be such a turn-on. We were cleaning out some old clothes to give away one weekend when Kathy started to kiss me and nibble on my earlobe. I was starting to get hot and bothered when suddenly Kathy asked if I would try on an outfit of hers. For a brief second I considered saying no, but part of me really wanted to try the outfit on, so I agreed. Kathy promised that it would be a lot of fun as she pulled one of her gray business suits out of the closet. I'd always thought she looked really sharp in that outfit and now found it exciting that I was going to wear it. I began to take off my shirt and pants when she tapped me on the shoulder and said she had a few more things to go with the suit. My eyes widened and my heart pounded as I took the lingerie Kathy held out to me. I quickly stripped off my underwear, pulled on the panties and stockings, then asked Kathy to help with the bra. Moments later I was hooked into a bra and was holding up my arms to allow Kathy to slide a slip over me. I picked out a pretty white blouse with a floppy pink bow from her closet, buttoned it up, then stepped into the knee-length, pleated skirt, tucked in my blouse and fastened the skirt around my waist. I know I should have felt silly or even downright stupid standing there in my wife's clothes, but she kept telling me how cute I looked and kissing me, which seemed to make me forget that I was a guy in a skirt. I looked at my reflection in a full-length mirror and began to giggle. That's right, I giggled. Me, macho stud, standing there in my wife's suit and lingerie giggling. Kathy pulled me down on the bed and began to seduce me by running her hand up and down my legs. At first, when she tried to reach under my skirt, I'd stop her hand and giggle that I wasn't that kind of girl, but it wasn't long before my skirt was pulled up, my lingerie was down, and I was that kind of girl. Several hours later I was wearing only a bra and panties, curled up in Kathy's arms asleep. I woke up before Kathy and was pretty shaken up to see how I was dressed. I got out of bed, and by the time I had finished in the bathroom, Kathy had woken up and was telling me that she couldn't imagine anything better than what we had just been through. She started kissing and fondling me again while asking if I enjoyed it too. I returned her kisses, telling her that we should try it again sometime. Kathy smiled and promised that once we were done with the housework we'd get back to our little game and that this time it would be even better. I started to take off the bra and panties, but Kathy stopped me and asked if I'd mind leaving them on for a little while longer. I didn't really want to keep them on, but it seemed so important to Kathy, and since it had been so much fun, I told her that it would be okay. I began to reach for my pants and shirt, but Kathy handed me something else she wanted me to wear instead. This time, instead of her business suit, she wanted me to wear a short denim skirt, a white pullover top, a pair of her ankle socks, and a pair of her sneakers. With a shrug of my shoulders, I pulled on the half-slip she handed me, then put on the rest of the clothes. I was starting to feel pretty silly by then, but as soon as I said something to Kathy about it, she told me that I looked just fine, and it made her happy that I'd play this little game with her. Seconds later, all doubt had gone from my mind, and I was merrily spraying on some of her favorite perfume. Kathy, of course, was all smiles. Everything was going just the way she'd hoped for. After a short time getting adjusted to wearing a skirt, things went pretty smoothly, and soon I was humming to myself as Kathy and I cleaned and dusted. Working together seemed to be a lot of fun to me, and it only took a few short hours until everything was spotless. I was starting to feel awfully hungry, and when I asked Kathy what we were going to do about dinner, she asked if I'd mind going out for dinner. I told her that it sounded good to me and started for the bedroom to get changed when she called me back. I said that I was going to change back into slacks and a jersey, but she insisted that I go dressed as a woman, saying that she just knew I'd have fun. I decided to put my foot down, but somehow I'd lost control, and after all was said and done, my foot ended up covered in nylon and stuck into a pair of her low-heeled shoes. I couldn't figure out what had gone wrong. I was absolutely certain that I didn't want to take our little game public, and I was horrified that someone might recognize me, but once again Kathy managed to calm my fears. Just over an hour later, I was walking into a little place across town wearing a mid-calf length twill skirt and a pink top. I had no trouble replacing the denim skirt and socks I was wearing with the dressier skirt and stockings, and I have to admit that I was pleasantly surprised when Kathy pulled out a short blonde wig for me to wear. Once she got the wig positioned just right, she quickly made up my face with her cosmetic kit. As I studied myself in the mirror, Kathy kept saying that I made a really pretty lady and that we were going to have a great time. Just like all of the times in the past, Kathy not only had me convinced, but I was actually looking forward to going out this way. Dinner was fabulous, and no one ever paid any attention to the two women carrying on a low conversation over their dinner. After dinner, I was feeling so elated that when Kathy suggested we go to the mall for a little shopping trip, I was all for it. As we shopped, I momentarily wondered how I could be dressed as a woman in public and not feel the least bit uncomfortable. I never did figure out the answer to that question though. Wearing a skirt and top seemed to be quite comfortable and enjoyable, so I didn't bother pursuing things any further. Besides, Kathy had called my attention to a display of really cute outfits, and I was busy trying to find my size. One outfit in particular really caught my eye. It had a black jacket with white jewel buttons in a gold setting. The skirt was a floral print with violet, gold, green, and brown running through it. A scarf that matched the skirt was meant to be worn around the neck as an accent to the outfit. Kathy suggested that I try it on, and I never even tried to object. I found a size that we thought would fit, and off to the dressing rooms I went. When I came out to show off the outfit, Kathy told me that I looked so pretty in that outfit that she wanted to buy it to wear to work. She promised that if I liked, she'd let me wear it once in a while for our little game. It sounded like a wonderful deal to me, so I hurried back to change into my own outfit. I must have tried on 5 or 6 different outfits, and Kathy raved about me in each of them. She was making me feel so good that I insisted on going to 2 other stores for a little window shopping. I was worn out by the time we got home and just plopped down on the couch, kicked off my heels, wiggled my nylon-covered toes, and broke into a giggling fit. I had gone to dinner, shopped at several ladies' dress stores in the mall, and even used the ladies' restroom without a problem. I kept thanking Kathy over and over for helping me to have such a lovely evening, and actually begged her to let me do it again someday. Kathy smiled a strange little smile and said that she was sure we'd be doing it again in the future. If only I had known what she had in mind. That night, as I got ready for bed, Kathy handed me a sheer white nightgown that she wore on our honeymoon and asked if I'd please wear it for her. Adding the please was really unnecessary. By this time I was so worked up that I would have pleaded to wear it. I slipped it on and felt so deliciously wicked and sexy that I began to seduce Kathy. She went along up to a point, but as soon as I tried to enter her she stopped me and said she wanted to do something different. I was curious about what she wanted, but so far her suggestions had made me happy, so I decided to go along with her. What an experience that turned out to be! Kathy took me to new heights of pleasure that I never knew existed. She showed me that there were a variety of ways to achieve a climax without ever having penetration. Not only that, but she somehow kept me in a state of excitement for longer and longer periods, granting relief only when it would be mutual. Little did I know that I'd never penetrate her again. I didn't know it at the time, but Kathy had been using the evening as a sort of test to make certain of the amount of control she had over me. When I agreed to go out dressed as a woman and was willing to model dresses publicly, she was fairly certain that she had me right where she wanted me. Just a few more suggestions to change my thinking and she'd be ready to pull out all of the stops. The idea of having me wear the nightgown she wore on our honeymoon was the first step in seeing how accepting of the coming change I could be, and I fell for it hook, line, and sinker. The next morning after showering I surprised myself by going straight to Kathy's lingerie drawer and selecting a bra and panties to wear. Next I put on one of her jogging suits, socks, and sneakers. I explained that they felt so much more comfortable than my clothes and then asked if she'd put some makeup on me. Of course she agreed and even helped me to fix my short hair into a little more feminine style. This time I made breakfast all by myself, and instead of burying myself in the sports section of the Sunday paper, I started by reading the fashion section. After breakfast I asked if we could run down to the video store and rent a few movies to watch. Kathy innocently asked if I planned on going out dressed the way I was, and when I said yes, took me back to our room to make a few changes. First she got the wig out and fixed my hair for me, then looking down at my crotch noted that I had a rather unladylike bulge there. She took a panty girdle from her drawer and told me to remove my jogging pants and pull the girdle up just to my hips. Once I had it in place she reached into my panties and after a minute of pushing and prodding had me pull the girdle all the way up. At first it was very uncomfortable what with having my genitals pulled tightly between my legs, but when I saw that the bulge in my pants was gone I was happy for her help. We took our time picking out some very nice, romantic movies, then dropped by the supermarket to get some munchies. I must have looked pretty good because I caught the manager smiling at me several times while we waited to check out. Kathy had done a good job of training me. I actually felt flattered that this man found me to be attractive, and as we left I caught his eye and flashed him a big smile. I was slowly but surely being mentally turned into a woman. I had no idea of what was happening to me and I had no way to resist. It was about that time that I noticed that I seemed to have lost some weight. My pants were a little loose in the waist and my shirts didn't seem to be fitting well either. Once again my doctor said it was no cause for concern, but that I might just want to take it a little easier as far as work. That seemed to be a great idea to me. I owned my own company and had just received a really good buyout offer from another larger firm. If I accepted, neither Kathy nor I would really need to work and could move to a resort area we both loved. The offer was real, but it played right into Kathy's hands. Without the handicap of a job and by moving to a different part of the country she could move ahead with her plans to make a woman out of me. After I sold the company, Kathy decided to work for a little while longer, so I had a lot of free time on my hands. It wasn't more than 2 days into my retirement that I began to dress in Kathy's clothes all day long. It seemed like fun to wear a pair of pink jogging shorts and a top while I cleaned the house and made dinner, and they seemed to fit better than some of my clothes. Of course I wore just a light touch of makeup around the house, and during my free time would try out different shades of nail polish. After a month later I was taking a shower when I noticed that my breasts seemed to be just a little bigger than I remembered. When I mentioned this to Kathy she seemed delighted that I appeared to be growing boobs. That scared the heck out of me. I was a guy. I shouldn't have breasts. Kathy noticed my concern, and after she talked to me for a minute or two I no longer felt worried at all. Kathy said that it was probably because of how much I'd been working out lately, and if I just kept going I'd soon have great muscles. When Kathy jokingly suggested that if it kept up I'd have something to put into the bras I wore, I actually started to get excited about the idea. I soon forgot all concern over my growing bust and was even happy to find I needed less padding to fill out the cups of my bras. Of course I took her advice and worked out even more, which exposed me to more of the chemical that made it easy for Kathy to keep me on track. By this time I was spending so much time in Kathy's clothes that she began to tease me by calling me Nancy. Nancy seemed like such a pretty name to me that I quickly adopted it and didn't care at all when Kathy referred to me as Nancy, her roommate. One day shortly before we were to move I became ill with a sore throat and fever. A quick exam by our doctor and I was told that I had a slight growth on my vocal cords and would have to have it removed. I reluctantly gave up being Nancy and was checked into a nearby hospital the next morning. After the operation I found that I couldn't speak, but the doctor said that it was a normal effect of the type of surgery I had. I was to be released the next day but would not regain the use of my voice for several more weeks. While I was recuperating we sold our house and prepared to move to the resort area in which we'd be living. Kathy packed everything up and shipped it out ahead but gave away all of my male clothes since she said they really didn't fit anymore. I was down in the dumps for a few days, not because I was stuck wearing Kathy's clothes, more because I almost hated to leave the old house. The day before we were to move Kathy said that she had a surprise to help cheer me up. She sat me down in the kitchen and proceeded to give me a perm. She prepared me well for this and I never made a peep while she cut, dyed, and rolled my hair. When she finished she handed me a mirror and asked what I thought. I was overcome with emotion and just sat and cried my eyes out. I now had blonde hair that curled almost to my collar. I hugged Kathy and cried, then hugged her some more. I only wished that my throat was better so that I could tell her how much I loved the way I looked. We got to our new home without any trouble and were soon unpacking and getting things straightened out. Kathy suggested that I go work out in my gym while she finished tidying up. I felt bad about leaving her to do everything herself, but I did miss working out, so off to my gym I went. Hours later I was hot and hungry. Kathy told me to take a shower while she thought about what we'd do for dinner. After my shower my hair looked terrible, so Kathy suggested that we do something about it. Hours of being exposed to the chemical had taken their toll on me and I eagerly jumped at her suggestion and read my women's magazine while she rolled my hair into curlers. We talked about possible dinner ideas while my hair dried and Kathy suggested a really upscale place not far from us. When I protested that I had nothing to wear she graciously offered to lend me an outfit for the evening. I was feeling a bit sad when Kathy chose the jacket and skirt outfit we had recently bought for herself, but my mood improved dramatically when she held out a low-cut, short black dress with spaghetti straps for me to wear. Only a few months before and I would have thought she was crazy to suggest that I wear a dress around the house, let alone go out to dinner in such a sexy outfit. That's how it would have been before, now though I told her that I thought the dress was divine and couldn't wait to wear it. Soon Kathy and I were busy putting on our lingerie and makeup, getting ready to do the town. Kathy gave me some really stunning lingerie to wear, all black nylon and lace. My bra was a strapless, low-cut, creation of black lace and satin designed to push the wearer's breasts up and out. It would be absolutely perfect with my dress. My panties were light as a feather, stretchy black nylon that seemed to hug my hips much the way Kathy's hugged hers. As a special treat Kathy let me wear a pair of sheer black nylons and a garter belt to make me feel really sexy. When I put on my bra I was amazed to see that my breasts really seemed to fill the cups so nicely and looked very provocative peeking above the lace trim on the cups. I rolled the nylons up and fastened them to my garter belt, then stepped into a black half-slip that matched the rest of my lingerie, and then I was ready for the dress. The dress had a back zipper that after Kathy pulled it up made the dress tighten up against my body. When I told her the dress was divine I wasn't kidding. I felt as though I were in heaven and for some reason kept thinking of the manager at the supermarket. Something inside of me wanted men to look at me and consider me to be a sexy, desirable woman. Kathy was going to do my makeup for me, but I begged her to let me try. After all, I'd been experimenting for some time now and had a definite idea of how I wanted to look hot. I finished my makeup and a glance in the mirror showed me that I was certainly one sexy-looking babe. A little perfume, some jewelry, and a pair of black suede heels completed my outfit and I felt very happy to be such a good-looking woman. Kathy of course reinforced my feelings by telling me how pretty I was, how well the dress fit me, and how lucky I was since not every woman could look as good in that dress. I ate up the praise, and couldn't wait to get out in public to see how guys reacted to me. That evening we had dinner, then did a little window shopping before impulsively deciding to see a play. I carried a small black purse, wore a white shawl around my shoulders to keep warm, and did my very best to be a classy lady. I noticed that Kathy was in an unusually upbeat mood that night but didn't know that she felt that I had passed my final exam. She had already convinced me to get rid of the slight hair on my face so I wouldn't have to be bothered by shaving, and that night showed her that I was finally comfortable as a woman. There were a few more details to attend to, but she knew she had taken her overbearing, sexist husband and turned him into a lovely woman. Kathy worked hard to reinforce her suggestions to me after that night, making certain that I had no desire to be anything but a woman. I had always known that Kathy was a very determined woman, and once she set her mind on something she never quit until she succeeded, and to Kathy, feminizing me was clearly in focus for her. Once she had gotten me comfortable as a woman, the rest was unbelievably easy. I never even brought up the idea of buying men's clothes. The idea seemed to be very distasteful to me. After all, Kathy and I both seemed happy with my being Nancy, and it was so much fun. Why ruin it? The very next day we went out shopping, and by the time we finished, Nancy had a complete wardrobe which included lingerie, jeans, tops, casual dresses and skirts, and some really gorgeous dresses for special occasions. After we finished clothes shopping, I had a manicure, a leg waxing, facial, and even had my ears pierced. I was so proud of the way I now looked, and Kathy seemed to be so happy that when my voice did finally recover from the surgery, it didn't matter at all to me that I sounded exactly like a woman. It was only later that I never had any growth on my vocal cords, just a bad cold. Kathy had used the cold as an opportunity to have my vocal cords thinned out, which gave me the woman's voice, and shaved my trachea a little to get rid of the prominent Adam's apple men have. Kathy decided that sitting at home was boring, so she decided to open her own consulting business, which she had always dreamed of doing. When she wondered aloud about how we'd be able to keep the house clean, I immediately volunteered to stay home and see that everything was perfect for entertaining business clients or friends who might drop by. Kathy opened her business soon thereafter, and I was quite happy staying at home, cleaning, cooking, shopping, and generally being the stereotypical suburban housewife. Kathy was thrilled that she could return to work, and I felt a sense of contentment that I'd never known before. Sometime afterwards, Kathy asked that I make certain the house was extra nice and to plan a special dinner for the weekend. My parents were coming to visit for a housewarming party, as well as Paul and his wife. The news of the party shook me up more than anything in the recent past. Suddenly it came back to me that I was a guy playing the part of a housewife. I had long curly hair, small but quite noticeable breasts, and did not own a single item of men's clothing. How in the world could I face people like this? One day Kathy came home and found me lying on the bed crying my eyes out. She held me and told me not to worry, everything would be fine. She suggested that to take my mind off of my concerns, I might want to go to the gym and work for a little, while saying that she was certain I'd feel better very quickly. I did as Kathy suggested, and after a few minutes she even stopped by to talk to me and calm my fears. She just seemed to have a way to make me feel better, and it wasn't much longer before I was looking forward to our upcoming party. Saturday finally arrived, and the party was that afternoon. Kathy showered and dressed while I set the table and prepared an elaborate dinner. While dinner was cooking, I took a nice hot shower, shaved my legs and underarms, set my hair, then got dressed for the party. After searching through my closet, I finally decided on a black, two-piece outfit with sheer sleeves, a low neckline, and a short, straight skirt that fell to just above my knees. I selected matching black lingerie from my drawer, a pair of silky black pantyhose, and a pair of stiletto pumps. I loved the way that the jacket hugged my curves while the skirt clung tightly to my rounded hips and butt and was just short enough to draw attention to my legs. I stepped into my heels, took out my curlers, did my makeup, added jewelry and perfume, then went out to wait with Kathy. The doorbell finally rang, and I followed Kathy out to greet our guests. 4 women walked into the house, and I thought I recognized my mother and sister-in-law immediately. I was a little confused over who the other 2 women were. Kathy took their jackets and left the room, leaving me with the other women. My mother hugged me and told me that I looked so pretty and how happy she was for me. Then Carrie kissed my cheek and told me how lovely I looked. Kathy returned to the room at that moment, and smiling at my mother and Carrie asked if they were ready to make the necessary introductions. Mom smiled and told Carrie that she should go first since I had already met her friend once before and wanted to save the best for last. Carrie's friend did look familiar, although I had a hard time placing where I had met the pretty young blonde until Carrie said her name was Amanda. I stared at the woman for what seemed like hours until Kathy came up to me and asked me to say hello to her brother. Paul? I asked, stunned. Amanda, corrected the woman with a soft sensuous voice as she kissed my cheek. It's Amanda now. She was beautiful in a forest green, floral print jacket and a short black skirt. From her patent leather pumps to her wavy blonde hair, she was a vision of loveliness. Her movements were as graceful as a cat's as she went to sit down. Before I could say any more or ask any questions, though, my mother came over with her friend. Nancy, my mother said slowly. I'd like to introduce your Aunt Marie. Of course you might remember her better as your father. Hello, Nancy, the woman said softly. I'm glad to see that everything worked out for the best for you. You're quite an attractive woman. I couldn't stop staring. The woman who stood in front of me wore her collar-length brunette hair in a very becoming style for a middle-aged woman and was impeccably dressed in a long-sleeved, lilac-colored, knit dress, stockings and pumps. As I stared at her face, I could make out certain of my dad's features under her makeup. She wore gold hoop earrings in her pierced ears, a 3-strand gold necklace and a woman's ring with dad's birthstone. Kathy, Carrie, and my mother took seats on the couch while Amanda, Marie, and I sat across the room from them. They took turns explaining to us exactly what had been done to us and why. It began as Kathy's idea strictly for me. In almost 8 years of marriage, she couldn't change my macho, sexist attitudes about women no matter how hard she tried. At the hypnotism demonstration, the idea came to her: the only way I'd ever really change my attitude towards women was if I could see life from a woman's point of view. During a break in the show, she mentioned the idea to Carrie and my mother, who also had the same problems with their husbands. All agreed that it was a great idea, and Kathy proposed it to the hypnotist, who provided the means for post-hypnotic suggestions. The women tried to get through to us through those suggestions, but our ideas were much too hard to break. That was when Kathy's friend suggested the chemical that would allow them to break through our resistance. Kathy was the first to try the chemical out and was thrilled with the results. Soon I stopped spouting my usual sexist ideas and began to help around the house. Kathy, however, didn't think that it was enough payment for the years of trouble to simply have me help with the housework, so she hatched her plan to turn me into Nancy. Never one to take half steps, Kathy boldly plunged ahead with the details of making a woman out of me. The frilly apron had of course been her idea, and when it worked, she whispered the code word to me one morning and gave me her panties to wear. Next came the nightgown, then the outfits for around the house. The lovemaking sessions were rewards for good response, which appealed to a primary instinct in me and helped make the suggestions stick. We had also been taking female hormones, which made it easier for us to adjust to being treated as women and reshaped our bodies. One day she mentioned how well things were going with me to Carrie and my mother, who after a short discussion decided to change Kathy's brother and my father. They proved to be much easier to affect than I was, and soon were well along the way to becoming women. The night I first met Amanda was her public debut and was considered to be a rousing success by Kathy and Carrie. It took Kathy a little more work to break me down from that point, but of course it wasn't long before I too was out in public as a woman. Since Dad had retired early, Mom had more time to work on him, but she said that once she got him started, he went without a fight, and in less than 2 months he was wearing nothing but nylon and lace. A month later, she and Dad joined a singles group and were having the time of their lives traveling around the country as 2 middle-aged women. Their group held weekly dances for which they never missed or lacked escorts for. I suggested that Amanda and Marie come out to the kitchen to help me with dinner and to get caught up with what had happened to us. We had a great time laughing, gossiping, and just getting to know each other as women. I really felt that I knew these 2 women better after only a short time than I ever had before. Marie was so funny, telling us all about some of the men she had dated and how she reacted to their advances. Amanda was a laugh a minute, telling us how she was working for Kathy as a sales representative and couldn't get over how easy it was to get a sale as an attractive woman. She hadn't bought many lunches since taking her job. Men were always willing to buy lunch for such a good-looking woman. We continued our conversation over dinner, and our wives filled in some of the missing details about our transformations. It seems that Amanda also had a vasectomy recently, and it was during that operation that we were castrated and slow-release female hormone devices had replaced our testicles. The vitamins we took every morning were female hormones meant to supplement our implants and give us the secondary sex characteristics of women such as wide hips and breast growth. Dad was castrated during what he thought was a prostate operation and took so well to the hormones and hypnotism that after 6 months he voluntarily submitted to breast enhancement surgery. Cupping his hands under his breasts, he proudly held up his 36C breasts, which stirred feelings of jealousy in me. I decided right then and there to talk to Kathy about having implants done. I was tired of padded bras and wanted breasts that could nestle securely in a pair of C-cups myself. That's how it happened that 3 women tired of the sexist nonsense from their husbands decided that making us over as women would be the best thing for us, and I'm sure I speak for Amanda and Marie when I say that we're happy they did.